Britain keeps producing prehistoric discoveries that do not fit the simple Stonehenge story most people were taught. A monument built and rebuilt across more than 1,000 years. Stones dragged from mountains nearly 200 miles away. A buried landscape hidden beneath the soil that no one knew was there until machines were dragged across the grass and told researchers to look again. The pattern is the same every time. Researchers arrive expecting one thing. The ground shows them something else. For most of modern history, Stonehenge was understood as a single object, a ring of standing stones on an empty plain. Impressive, but isolated. A puzzle you could walk around in an afternoon. That version is no longer holding, because beneath the famous stones and across the fields that surround them, surveys have revealed something the eye alone could never see. Not a monument standing alone, but a monument standing at the center of something far larger. This is the story of what the scanning revealed, and why the discovery did not solve the mystery. It widened it. Start with the place itself. Stonehenge sits on Salisbury Plain in Wiltshire in southern England, a high chalk grassland, open and exposed, where the wind moves across the fields without obstruction. The monument is a ring of enormous standing stones, some weighing more than 20 tons, arranged with a precision that still draws people from across the world. What is established is this: the site was not built in a single moment. It was constructed and modified in stages across many centuries, beginning with an earthwork enclosure, a circular ditch and bank, dug around 5,000 years ago. The great stones came later. The site was used, altered, and revisited over an immense span of time. What remains uncertain is why. And for a long time, that question was asked while looking only at the stones. The surrounding land was treated as background, empty, quiet. It was not quiet at all. Beginning in 2010, a major research effort known as the Stonehenge Hidden Landscapes Project set out to map the ground around the monument in a way that had never been done before. The work was led by the University of Birmingham, together with the Ludwig Boltzmann Institute, an Austrian research body specializing in archaeological prospection. They did not dig, not at first. Instead, they used ground-penetrating radar and magnetometers, machines towed slowly back and forth across the fields, sending signals into the earth and reading what bounced back. Over several years, they covered several square miles of land surrounding Stonehenge. The idea was simple: map the empty space around the famous monument and confirm what was already assumed, that Stonehenge stood more or less alone. The data said otherwise. Beneath the soil, the surveys revealed buried pits, ditches, and features that had never been recorded. Traces of structures invisible from the surface. Signs that the land around the stones had been shaped and used far more intensively than anyone had documented. Researchers arrived expecting an empty landscape. The instruments showed them a crowded one. The most striking discovery came not at Stonehenge itself, but a short distance to the northeast, at a site called Durrington Walls. Durrington Walls is a vast circular earthwork enclosure, one of the largest known in Britain. It sits close to the River Avon, less than 2 miles from Stonehenge. Excavations there have revealed the remains of houses, traces of intense activity, and evidence of large gatherings of people. For years, researchers debated its relationship to the stones. Then, the surveys returned a signal that demanded explanation. Beneath the bank of Durrington Walls, the radar appeared to detect a line of large buried features, spaced around the perimeter, interpreted at first as the remains of a row of enormous standing stones, or stone holes. The finding made headlines: a hidden monument, a possible superhenge concealed beneath the earth. But this is where the story shows its real character. When archaeologists excavated to test the radar readings, what they found was more complicated than the first interpretation suggested. The features were reinterpreted, debated, and revised. The simple picture broke down. The discovery did not close the question. It opened a new one. Then came the pits. In 2020, a research team announced the detection of a ring of large shafts surrounding Durrington Walls, each one several meters across and several meters deep, arranged in a wide circle more than a mile in diameter. The find was published in the journal Internet Archaeology, with researchers from multiple British universities involved in the work. If the interpretation holds, it would represent one of the largest prehistoric structures ever identified in Britain. A vast circle of shafts dug into the chalk, encircling the landscape around Durrington Walls, and by extension, oriented in relation to Stonehenge itself. The purpose is unknown. Some researchers have suggested the shafts marked a boundary, defining a sacred or significant zone. Others have urged caution, noting that natural processes can produce features that resemble deliberate construction, and that interpretation of buried data is rarely simple. What is established is that the features exist. What remains uncertain is what they were for. The discovery does not solve the mystery. It widens it. By this point, the pattern is clear. Stonehenge was not standing alone. It was one visible piece of a landscape that had been used, altered, and remembered for thousands of years. Consider what surrounds it. To the north runs the Stonehenge cursus, an immense elongated earthwork enclosure stretching for nearly 2 miles across the plain, older than the stone circle itself. Its purpose still unexplained. Across the surrounding fields rise hundreds of burial mounds, the round barrows of later generations, clustered deliberately within sight of the monument. A processional earthwork known as the Avenue leads away from Stonehenge, curving toward the river Avon, connecting the stones to the water. And near Durrington Walls stands Woodhenge, the remains of concentric rings of timber posts marked today by concrete markers where the wood once stood. A monument of wood, echoing a monument of stone. None of these were random. They were placed in relation to one another, in relation to the river, in relation to the movement of people across the land, and in some cases in relation to the sky. The stones themselves carry a mystery that has only deepened with modern science. The largest stones at Stonehenge, the Sarsens, are believed to have come from the Marlborough Downs around 20 miles to the north. In 2020, a geochemical study published in the journal Science Advances traced the majority of the Sarsens to a specific area called West Woods, narrowing down a question that had remained open for centuries. But the smaller stones, the blue stones, tell a stranger story. Geological analysis has traced many of them to the Preseli Hills in West Wales, nearly 150 miles away. The question of how these stones traveled such a distance, by human effort or by other means, has been argued for decades. Recent work has gone further still. Researchers have identified the likely quarry sites in Wales and even proposed that the blue stones may first have stood in an earlier stone circle there, before being dismantled and moved to Salisbury Plain. Why move stones across an entire country to rebuild them somewhere else? The question is still open. So what was this landscape for? The honest answer is that researchers hold several explanations, and no single one is proven. One view holds that it was a great ceremonial gathering place, where people traveled long distances at particular times of the year, feasting at Durrington Walls, and moving in procession toward the stones. The animal bones found at Durrington, studied for where the animals were raised, suggest people came from far across Britain to gather there. Another view emphasizes death and ancestry. Cremated human remains have been found at Stonehenge, leading some researchers to describe it as a monument bound up with the dead, a place of memory and burial set apart from the world of the living. Another emphasizes the sky. The monument's main axis aligns with the rising sun at the midsummer solstice and the setting sun at the midwinter solstice. That the builders tracked the movement of the sun is widely accepted. How central that purpose was remains debated. And another view sees the whole project as an act of unification, a vast undertaking that drew scattered communities together across generations to build something larger than any of them. These explanations are not all mutually exclusive. The landscape may have meant different things at different times across the 1,000 years of its use. Return now to the ground beneath the stones. Every survey adds more. Every excavation complicates the last interpretation. The story does not settle. It expands. This is what makes Stonehenge difficult. Not that it is mysterious, but that the more closely it is studied, the larger the mystery becomes. What is established is this: Stonehenge was built and rebuilt across many centuries. Its stones came from distant places. It sits at the heart of a constructed landscape filled with earthworks, timber circles, burial mounds, and buried features only now being detected. People gathered there from across Britain. It was tied to the sun, to the river, to the dead. What remains uncertain is why any of it was done. Why these particular stones? Why this particular place? Why an effort sustained across so many generations that the people who finished it were separated from those who began it by spans of time we struggle to imagine? If one of these discoveries changed how you see ancient Britain, leave it in the comments. Subscribe for more ancient sites that keep rewriting what researchers thought they knew.